Good to
right,
go?
we're rolling.
We're rolling. What up, Aurora? Hey, thanks for joining us again. We are back after 2 weeks of working through Jesus' miracles. We're all just chilling in Colorado, hanging out, missing all you guys in Aurora. We're going to go through some questions today and just kind of talk through our experiences. We want to know your guys' experience over the past couple of weeks as you've dove into some stories that maybe you knew or didn't know or just needed to reread. And I think for all of us, we've read these either once, twice, never, or a lot of times, and each time we read them, we get something different out of it, and we see a little bit more about Jesus's character as it unfolds. And so today, I'll start with you, Jamie. You're next up on my screen. As you read through these, as you worked on these discussions, what was your biggest takeaway? As like, here's how my view of Jesus's character changed or grew after reading these.
Yeah, I feel like I've come up with a lot of them. I feel like these miracles definitely show a lot about just who Jesus is and the type of God he is. But I think the biggest thing that I took away, and I think, Carrie, you talked about this in yours, of feeding the 5,000, of like how Jesus used the disciples to be a part of the miracle that he was performing. And I think that's something, the biggest thing I took away is like, he wants us to be a part of what he does. Not just with like those miracles, but just like everything that we do. So like being in ministry or just relationships that we have, like God doesn't need us to do any of that. Like he could use anybody that he wanted to, but yet he wants us to be a part of what he does, just in his kingdom. And I think that that's really cool. It just shows like how loving he is and how much that he just cares about us, that he just wants us to be a part of what he's doing in this world. So I think
that's awesome. Put that in like a short, finite, like, our God is a blank type of God.
Our God is I don't know. He is a caring God.
It's great.
I think. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Cool. That's great. Carrie DeWitt, you're up next.
Hello. Yeah, I'm with Jamie. I feel like there was so much from each day. I really did learn something new about who Jesus is. I'm with you, Jamie, like the partnership aspect of things, and Juliana said this too, of like, Jesus can do it, and he can do anything at the snap of a finger, but he calls us to action, and he like a lot of times asks us to move first before he like directs us. So that has been something I've learned like over the years, of like, I sit and wait for him to do something and then I'll move. And I think he's asking us like, no, start moving, and then I will like steer you and direct you. And then the other thing that really like stuck out to me every time, specifically during Dan's, is just like the humanity of Jesus. Like, Jesus was fully human. Like, he was fully human and fully God, but in his humanity, he felt sorrow and he felt sadness when people were hurting, and when Lazarus passed away, he wept. It's like the shortest verse of the Bible, he just wept. And like in the one I talked about where Jesus feeds the 5,000, like when he sees the crowd of people, it says he felt compassion. Like, we see the humanity and the feeling of Jesus, and that he really can like empathize with what we're feeling. Like, he didn't feel it as God felt it and like this superior being. He felt it as like a man, or like any one of us would feel those same emotions. And so it just gives me that like confidence of like, Jesus, you actually do know what this feels like. Like, we don't just say it. You don't just tell us like that you're near to the brokenhearted. Like, you walked through it. And so that's become more real to me over these last 2 weeks, I think, than it's ever felt.
That's great. So if you had to like summarize that into one sentence, like, Jesus is a blank type of God, what would you say?
Well, in that framework, I can't, but like, Jesus is a God.
Like, based off your biggest takeaway, what is it?
Jesus can empathize. Or like Jesus feels what we feel.
That's great. Thanks, Carrie DeWitt. I wish that the next miracle that Jesus could perform was upgrading your internet.
Gosh, I knew that was coming. I think
Yeah.
it's gotten old.
All right, Mad Dog, you're up.
I think something that I really liked about the video that you did, Cole, was that God is like literally turning water into wine, and he could have like every right to be like showy and flashy and like, I deserve all the praise, give it to me, here I am, but he doesn't do that. And he did things quietly to honor that couple. And it just really made me think, like, even though I might not be able to see it like right now, like what miracles is God performing in my life, like quietly and humbly. And it seems like really frustrating with everything that's going on right now. But I've been thinking a lot of like, what is God doing in this time, like quietly for all of us? So I think that's something that, and if I had to summarize it, I would say, I would probably just say, like, our God seeks us out and is like working for us, even when we might not see it or know about it. He's always working and doing things to honor us.
That's great. And what type of God does that?
I don't want to say reckless, but like his love being reckless, I guess, like a fighter.
That's awesome.
A God that fights for us. Yeah.
That's great. Cool. Jonas, hit us with that pregnancy wisdom.
I feel like with pregnancy, I've just gotten dumber. I may just stop talking like mid-sentence and bring it back. So, but no, I think one thing that really, like to echo what Carrie said, is a lot of times I feel like I forget that like God was fully human too. But like, I think the one thing that, stuck out to me the most in all the miracles was, one, a lot of the people came like already having a lot of faith that Jesus was going to do that. And then during the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus gave thanks before he performed the miracle. And I think that just shows that like our God is like, Jesus is like humble and he is kind and like, I don't know, that just really stuck out to me, that like even before the miracle, like Jesus gave thanks. And so like he was constantly faithful and fully reliant on like his Father. And so yeah, that's what kind of stuck out to me.
That's awesome. So what kind of God does that?
I'd say like I think a humble God would.
Cool. That's great. Thank you. Daniel.
What's up?
Hit us with it.
Okay, I might do two because Carrie did two.
Yeah, Carrie always breaks the rules. So,
I think one of the like big things, I was in John for my talk on John 11 and Lazarus, and John talks a lot about the glory of God and the glory of Jesus. And I was saying this to Cole and Carrie yesterday. I didn't get to say it in my talk, but the glory of God up until that point was something that was really dangerous. So you've got a holy God and his glory, and then sinful, rebellious people, and those two things don't mix. It's like a dry leaf in a wildfire, like we should be destroyed by it. And one of the things that the miracles does is show us Jesus' glory and shows us God's glory. And so there's this beautiful like accessibility. I think that's like, we have a God who's accessible, even though he's glorious, and seeing Jesus should destroy us rightly, justly. But somehow through Jesus' ministry, the glory of God is mediated to us in such a beautifully accessible way that it does the opposite. It brings life and healing for people who believe. And I think that just struck me afresh. Like, it's easy to just go, oh yeah, Jesus came and did cool things. Of course you would if you could.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a dangerous, and you spoke about power in your talk this morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that power should destroy us, but it doesn't. And
Yeah.
I'm really thankful for that. And that struck me. And I guess the second thing was, there's all these I am statements in John. And the one I got was I'm the resurrection and the life. The one before it is I'm the good shepherd, who lays down his life for his sheep, and the sheep hear my voice. And I'd never put this together, that the good shepherd is followed by the story of Lazarus. And you see Jesus laying down his life for his friend Lazarus. So he like puts himself in danger. So in chapter 10, the religious leaders have threatened to stone him, have tried to stone him. Jesus escapes. To go back and save Lazarus means that Jesus is putting his life at risk, and that ultimately leads to him going to the cross. And then he talks to Martha, he talks to Mary, and he talks to Lazarus, and they all recognize his voice and are either comforted in the case of Mary and Martha, or brought back to life in the case of Lazarus. But that comes at great cost to him. So you see literally, like in the next story, the good shepherd laying down his life for his sheep. And so we have a God who goes first, I think. Like
That's great.
Yeah, he's a good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep. And we see that, like, not just at the cross, but even in the lead up to the cross. So.
Yeah. So in your case, in your life, in your whatever you're walking through right now, how does all that, if you were to like play that out and say, like, here's the type of God that I follow right now, based on what you just said and what you just read, like applicable to your life, what's the characteristic right now that's showing up that's like, this is who God is?
Yeah, I mean, just to bundle all that together, he's a God who's with me, who I have access to, who's shown me how to live. And so in relationships, as I think about like how I love and serve people who are my friends and people who I love, or people who are my enemies and, you know, I feel like want to stone me, whatever that looks like. I don't know. I just feel like I have a model and a path that's laid out before me of what it means to not hold on too tightly to my life or my reputation. And so, like, because I see Jesus sacrificing and not destroying his enemies, I have a model so that I can love and serve my enemies and try and bring blessing, even at risk of my own comfort.
That's great. So it's one word. What's one word that's like, our God is a God who does blank, that does all that?
Our God is a God who serves. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Julianna.
Yes.
Hit us with it.
So there is definitely a lot that I took away from it, but I think this go around Jamie's story, when she talks about the woman who was bleeding for 12 years and Jesus, who was also on the way to heal the man's daughter who was sick. I was just struck by how interruptible Jesus was, how patient he was, and how unhurried he was, where the people around him were crowding in on him, wanting to touch him, wanting to be near him, and probably desiring things from him. And even in Carrie's story, where the people meet him there, like the paparazzi and the Kardashians, or even in my story where he had to get into a boat and push off to be with Peter in the water. It's just like, he's so slow and he's so patient, and he is so willing to just sit with people and listen to people. And I think that's what really struck me, was that it doesn't really matter what we're walking through. That God's going to be there for us. He's going to be patient with us. And I think I said this yesterday when we were doing our live videos, but if I'm really trying to become more like Jesus, that is an area that I just think I struggle with. Like, I'm not interruptible, I'm not patient, and I put my desires before others a lot of the time. And so that was just something that I really sat with in a lot of these stories, where I was like, oh, he's just so interruptible and loves people so well. So if I were to sum it up, I'd probably just say, like, our God is patient.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, for me, a combination of what you said and what Madison said. I think in every story that we read, and and then mixed with like how I unpacked miracles this morning, like for us to look at a miracle, it's like, it's insane. It doesn't make sense. Like we can't fathom it. So Madison's word of reckless, like makes sense when we look at it, like that just seems like haphazard and doesn't make sense to us. But for me, it's like when I look at Jesus over each story that we read, Jesus is intentional. And like for me in my life, like I go fast and not in a good way, and I'm busy and I do a bunch of stuff that isn't intentional. So when I like summed up all of them, looking at each one individually, it's like our God that we follow, like who Jesus is, like he is intentional and everything is well thought out and well planned out, and nothing's haphazard. Nothing's like just done half-assed, you know, like everything that Jesus did was like fully focused, like what you were saying, Juliana, like he's present and he moves slow and he moves from person to person. But like my biggest takeaway was like in everything, there's all these like cool, crazy things that we can't explain, but in the midst of it, everything that Jesus did was like so meticulous and intentional that it was like eye-opening to me of like, if I'm trying to be like Jesus, one of the things that needs to change out of the 5 billion that I have to change is like my intentionality towards how I approach people. And yeah, that was my biggest takeaway. Any last thoughts? Anybody have anything that as you read, you're like, this is one thing that I wish I could have added to my talk or added to what I had to say today? Is there anything that anybody was like, here's my biggest realization that I didn't realize until right now?
Wait,
You have
Cole,
30
what kind of God is?
Our God is an
God is the
intentional
kind of-
God. I said it earlier, Carrie.
You're supposed to end with it.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you for asking. Our God is an intentional God. Anybody else have any huge takeaway that was like, this was my biggest like aha moment in all of this? Go ahead. Yeah, James, I was gonna say don't all jump at once, but thank you for jumping.
So going through my talk, when I was writing it, I actually like switched it up right before I recorded it. Because I was trying to find a devotional to go through with some of the high school students that I'm with. I was trying to find one, and I like looked at a preview one, and it said like, it brought up that story of the woman bleeding that like saw out Jesus, and that was like where like I didn't realize reading through it and first reading my talk that Jesus like stopped and like made sure that she was seen by Jesus. And I think that like, I mean, going through my talk, that was kind of one of the main points I made was like, Jesus wanted her, like he could have just let her go without being seen. Like that's what she wanted. She was healed already. Her life was changed already. Like Jesus didn't have to stop and made like call her out basically, but he did because he wanted her to be seen. And I think like that stuck with me a lot of like, Jesus wants us to know that he sees us, he knows what we're dealing with, he knows our needs, and he wants to just know that he cares about it. And I think that was like it was literally right before I was about to record, I found that and I'm like, okay, I have to add that in because it's just so important. And I feel like that was like a lot with just all the other miracles that he did too. Like he wanted these people to know that he cares about every single need that they have, like big or small, like the wedding at Cana, like that, to give them that couple that. I just think it's incredible. It just shows like how kind Jesus is.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Can I ask a question out of that? Maybe for the whole group or Jamie? I feel like there's this beautiful meeting of in Jesus, you see someone who is willing and able to do something about the problems of sin, sickness, death even. But how do you guys walk through that grief of not seeing that answered in the present for us right now? So those people did get to see it in the present. Maybe not the way they expected. But that's been a really hard wrestle for Ali and I think. And there is something beautiful, but also kind of discouraging, I think, when you spend time looking at all these incredible things that Jesus could do. And you think, why isn't he doing it for me now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been in that headspace a lot. Maybe not recently, but just in previous years. There's just been like hard years, hard months, hard days where it's like there's so much good going on in the world, and it's like it's almost hard to celebrate with other people that are in a good spot, because you start spinning down so quickly of like, what about me? And I don't have a good answer for it. I don't have a good answer for like, here's how I got out of it. Here's the steps that helped me move through it. But like the grief is overwhelming. And so to stop and like that, I think that's subconsciously why I wanted everybody to end their thing with like, here's the type of God that we follow and want to like strive after, is because like, it's really easy to forget those characteristics in those really dark spots. And it's really easy to be like, Jesus has abandoned me. Jesus doesn't care. Jesus does it. Like I'm not important. All those other people are. Yeah, I don't have a good answer, but it's just been like trying to remember who Jesus is in the midst of the darkness has been one of the only like redeeming factors in those dark moments. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question, Dan?
Yeah, that's good.
Cool.
Yeah, that's good.
I would say I'm obviously not good at handling it. I think what has come from studying this and hearing you guys all teach is like the like issue of timing. And so like when you talked about Mary and Martha being like, if you would have been here, like you knew if you would have come sooner, this wouldn't have happened. Or the one who, the father, daughter, son who died because he was helping and healing somebody else, so he was late, and then the child died. But then he performs. It's like that miracle is so much greater and so much better because of that extra time, that like he didn't answer that right away, and it's more profound because of what happened in that waiting and in that time. And so I think that's something like I'm for sure going to walk forward with, is like there are things that I want right now and I've prayed for right now, that's like a desire, and it's a good desire, and it's not happened. And I think like the miracle, whenever that happens and whatever it looks like, it may not look like what I'm asking for, will be so much greater because of this season of waiting and because it didn't happen the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
Granted, that's a lot easier. It's like a lot harder to look at from the lens of death, right? Because some people just pray like, please spare my child, my parent, my whatever's life, and it doesn't happen, and that's pretty hard and permanent on earth right now. And so that's like a whole nother playing field I haven't experienced directly. So I can't speak to that, but like for those things that I'm asking for and praying for that haven't happened, I think I'm encouraged because he didn't forget about that child. He didn't forget about Lazarus. He knew that it would all come back to his glory.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like keep going back to like kind of Jim's like tagline that he always said when he first came back from sabbatical of like, and remind me again, I don't think I have it, but like God's good. He wants good for me. I don't remember the other part, but like just knowing that like God like sees everything that we go through, and he wants good for us no matter what. And then like going back into like what I talked about in the end of my talk of like going back to like Paul's thorn in his flesh, of how like he begged God to take that away, and Jesus said no. Like every time he said no, he never took it away from him. And just like told Paul, like just rely on me, like I'm gonna take care of you no matter what your circumstances, no matter like if this is what it's gonna be like for the rest of your life, like I'm enough for you, like my strength will get you through. I think that's something that I fall back on all the time.
I think for me, I was just talking with my Bible study about this yesterday. We're working through like how you cope with those unanswered prayers. And I was talking about how a lot of times I just get so like wrapped up in like right now, and I have all this negative stuff circulating in my head. But I have to like step out of that and look back at what God has already done, so I can see that he is faithful in the things that I couldn't understand then, why he wasn't answering my prayers, but I see now. And also, I think something that's helped me with that is not just like looking at evidence for myself, but looking at evidence in the lives of the people around me, like with my family and the restoration that I've had there, and the restoration and faithfulness that I see in so many other people through the stories of just like Flatirons, like all of the amazing things that God is doing there. So I think that's something that helps me, is stepping outside of like right now and all the negative stuff I have circling in my head, and looking back and looking around me too.
I think you're muted, Cole.
Yeah, I wasn't talking. Don't worry.
There you go.
No, I did. I did. I said that was good, and then I said, "What about you, Dan?" Like when you ask that question, what comes up in yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reminder, I mean, from John 11, just because it's fresh, that Jesus with us in the waiting, like he's with us in between those two realities, of, you know, his promise and the realization of that promise. And so like there's lots of things to cling on to, and he's with us in the midst of it. But I also think it's fine to just cry and be grieved. Like, you know, death and sickness is wrong and is an intrusion into God's good creation. And I think partly what you see in Jesus' anger and his tears at the tomb of Lazarus, that's how I read it anyway. And so I think there's affirmation that it's fine to grieve the brokenness and to just cry out that it's not right. And God's big enough to handle that. And yeah, I think where you fix your attention is really important as well, because you know, God's timeline isn't always fair in that he doesn't answer everyone's prayer in your circle at the same time. You know, there might be a couple who's given kids when another couple isn't, and they're both praying the same thing, you know, or whatever that grief might be, whatever that ask. And so I think not fixating on that, as hard as it is, but as a bunch of you have said so helpfully, like looking at who God is, what his timeline is, and his faithfulness in the past means that we can trust he'll be faithful in the future. And then I think the other thing is just like God works in paradoxes, right? And we see that too, that he defeats death by going to a cross. And so there's this like things won't happen the way we expect often. And that was true for Jesus' ministry. And so how much more true, or as true for our lives and our ministries. So I think there's just something about like the Christian life signing up to follow a king who went to a cross to establish his kingdom comes with bearing crosses. So I don't know, maybe we're kidding ourselves if we expect anything less than that. Yeah,
I think so. That's good. Thanks, Dan. Hey, Jonas, will you pray for us, and then we'll end our video and we'll jump into next week's Bible study.
God, I just thank you for today, and I thank you for this discussion and this group of people that we're just able to go through the miracles and learn more about you. And thank you for revealing yourself to us in these miracles and teaching us something new about you and just how good you are. And when we think we have you figured out, you just blow our minds again. And we just thank you for that. I pray for everybody right now in quarantine with whatever they're struggling with, that you would just comfort them and meet them where they're at. And as things start slowly opening back up and people go back to work, that you would just protect people, keep them healthy and keep them safe. And we love you and we thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Sick. See you guys next week.